Tim, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can you share a time when you changed a long-held belief and what influenced that change?
Yeah, so it's actually quite recently I read a book called The Dawn of Everything, which is a mixture of sort of archaeology and anthropology, and it sort of offers a new lens on human history and prehistory, in particular, sort of challenging the maybe, or what they say is a widespread view that humans have kind of progressed in a linear fashion from something like a sort of naive, savage state, if you like, through to what we might call civilization now, like capitalist civilization. So the whole book sort of kind of is challenging a lot of that. But what I found most interesting is that for me, for a long time, been quite pessimistic about human-based psychology and the possibility of humans kind of finding or rediscovering ways of existence that are better for us and everything else in the world. But this book did kind of really challenge that view that I held, and it really made me see things in a sort of different light by highlighting kind of what they see as all the different ways that humans have organized themselves and organized societies throughout history and prehistory. So it's sort of, I think it's opened up my opinions, beliefs about kind of what options are open to humanity, and that we're maybe not 100% sure if this is the right term, but maybe not sort of so psychologically determined to mess a lot of the things up that we seem to have messed up. Maybe that's not the right phrase either, but that's what I'm going for. I think was to go back to the kind of start of your question. I think what's influenced that change is a combination of, in the book, they're presenting what they see. So it's by someone called David Wengrove and David Graeber. They present a lot of evidence, what they think counts as good evidence for looking at reimagining human history, lots of parts of human history. So I think on the one side, it's being confronted with being shown that empirical evidence, which for me is always quite a powerful tool of changing one's beliefs and what you think you know. But of course, in the book and with most things, there is also the influence of the way they're using and interpreting and presenting that evidence. So I found their arguments quite persuasive, which certainly has influenced that belief change as well in me. So I think it's a combination of what I kind of considered quite persuasive argument and empirical evidence.
Are there any beliefs you feel you will never abandon and why?
I'd like to say no to that. I don't. I think there probably will be beliefs I will never abandon, but I can't think of a sort of really good reason for why any given belief should never be abandoned. I think in the face of any new arguments, new evidence, then for me, any belief that I hold is open to revision.
But what about maybe beliefs around value? Do you think those will also never change?
It's a good question. Sort of, do you mean sort of like moral values, like or like personal values that I might live by, or
I suppose both, but usually the ones people tend to say they'd never abandon are personal beliefs that, humans are fundamentally good or something like that. I'm not sure if they resonate with you.
I certainly have a lot of those values, like both what I might consider moral values or kind of principles I try and live by. I still, for me, I don't think although I can feel strongly about something on a day-to-day basis and try and maybe act in a certain way based on those value systems, for me, there's nothing that I feel would be the wrong word. There's nothing that I'm so certain about that I wouldn't be open to changing it. Like I said at the start, I think there will be values that I kind of, for example, I would hope to hold for my whole life, the value that it's a good thing to be kind to people and other beings in the world and the world itself. But I kind of wouldn't be confident enough in saying I will never change that value or that. I can't think of a good reason now, but there could be some new thing that challenges that value in me, and maybe if I found that really convincing, I would take on a new value system. It's maybe not the best example, but yeah. So I think for me, I don't know with certainty that my values are the right ones, and that gets into a whole lot. What counts as the right values and what are the right ones. I'm not certain about that. So the ones that I hold, they can be important to me. They can guide a lot of and motivate a lot of my actions. But I'd never want to hold on to them for in the face of better ideas or better evidence or better arguments.
Do you think people should also adopt this kind of mindset when approaching their own beliefs, or do you think this is more of a personal preference?
Good question. I'm always quite wary of saying someone should approach, say, these philosophical questions in a certain way. I think having been lucky enough to study lots of philosophy in my life, I think there's a lot of different useful and positive and interesting ways of approaching these questions. Personally, I do think it's useful and can be beneficial over time to be always open to change. I think we can get ourselves into some difficult situations, both in like day-to-day life and philosophically, if we stick too much to one view in the face of better arguments or different evidence, different ideas. So I suppose the short answer is I'd say yes, but I'm always kind of wary of telling people how to approach these sorts of big questions.
Next question, what does it mean to disagree well?
I think there's maybe two parts of disagreeing. So if thinking about the actual action or process of disagreeing with someone, so presenting your argument against them, I think respect is really important. But I also think that, especially when we're in a school context, I think the word respect can be kind of thrown around a lot, and it almost can become quite watered down and meaningless, because we're in a lot of our lives, we're told to respect this person, that person, these people, but we don't often get a chance to actually think about what respect means. So for me, if we're thinking about disagreement, I think respect would involve thinking about what you're saying or doing is how it might impact the person you're disagreeing with. So I suppose a simple example of that is your tone of voice, the level of your voice, things like that. I think also it's important to think about what are you disagreeing about? If I'm trying to convince this person to change their mind about something, what impact could that have? Are they going to need a second to process this information because it's about something very simple, or are they going to need a week or a year to actually engage with these ideas and to slowly change their mind? So being respectful of the way that you're challenging someone, I suppose, and that challenge may be experienced differently by them than you might initially think or assume. Does that make sense? And then I suppose aside from that, it's about kind of, for me, careful presentation of your arguments, your evidence, if you're using evidence, clarity as well. I think we can get in some very difficult situations when we're not clear with each other. Being transparent with where your arguments come from, where your thinking comes from, where the gaps in your knowledge and beliefs are, where the gaps in your evidence might be. So I suppose alongside that, that's sort of humility as well, being kind of an awareness of why you're disagreeing with someone. So is it just so that you can be the person that's won the argument, or is it something that's actually going to help progress something? So that, I'd say, would be all involved in the actual process of disagreeing. I think on the other hand, there's loads of work you need to do before that. So a lot of listening, I think, needs to go into anything before you start disagreeing, paying attention to what you are disagreeing with, doing the research into that if you need to, considering a wide variety of arguments, not just your position and their position, but as many other positions as you can that might feed into that topic or disagreement. So I think there's a lot of stuff you need to do before you actually, to disagree well, you need to have that kind of body of work behind you before you start actually presenting what you think.
And finally, how can schools and universities promote good disagreement?
I think creating a culture where it's encouraged and at the very least acceptable. So, and I think that can go beyond the boundaries of just say like debate sessions or discussion time. I think creating a culture and modeling acceptance of being disagreed with. So in the school, teachers being open to pupils challenging things, maybe everything. Obviously, there are limits to this. You can't just be doing that all the time. But I think there are ways of maybe creating space for young people to disagree with what's happening, and then if that means then explaining to them why it's happening, that's fine. But I think allowing them that opportunity. So I'd say that would be important. And then I think practice is kind of the main thing. So that is maybe in discussion sessions, debating sessions, whatever you want to call them, where there's debating and discussion may be two very different things. So I think, practicing, and often, so some of the work I do is facilitating philosophical discussions with young people. I do think depending on the group, and depending on their level and depending on their experience, having a facilitator in a discussion setting is very useful, because they can help mediate, they can help keep it focused. We can do all sorts of things to ensure that, for example, a certain level of respect is maintained. But having practice around topics, around ideas that are meaningful to the young people as well. And I think what meaningful means there, in my experience, can be a whole array of subjects. So it might be ethical debates that really have a big impact on their day-to-day life. And young people are also fantastic at doing extremely abstract philosophy, and they can get really into that. So when I say meaningful, when I say meaningful to young people, I don't mean to be dumbing down anything they could be discussing. I think young people are capable of discussing pretty much anything, but giving them practice about things that matter to them in the moment, so that they can feel like they really do have a position and that they want to defend that position, but that they need to be open to other people's positions and arguments. So I suppose where that might differ. When I was in school, for example, we'd often maybe some discussion sessions, which didn't have many of them, but you'd be kind of given a position to defend against someone else. And you kind of had to fake this caring about whatever position you'd been given in the class and then defend it, which is maybe useful at times, and it can help you maybe put yourself in other people's shoes. But I think finding topics and giving topics that young people will naturally want to argue about, and then help them kind of work towards not necessarily a resolution, but practice that disagreeing and agreeing process. I would say, well, I suppose with all of this, I think the flip side of disagreeing is agreeing, right? And I think those two things always go hand in hand. And actually, a lot of the young people I work with, they're very good at disagreeing with each other. One of the things they actually sometimes need practice with is how to agree with each other and how to listen to each other in order, and maybe see that they share some opinions and feelings and beliefs. So yeah, I think that just as a general, and this is a bit of a side, but I think part of being able to disagree well is always being able to be ready to agree as well. Yeah. And then I suppose on top of that, those two things, sorry, a bit rambling now, on top of the kind of setting the culture and giving people practice, I think then there can be a lot of benefit to allowing young people to think about the process of agreeing and disagreeing. So we might call that metacognition, but trying to raise to self-awareness what is going on when they're doing that, and asking them to think about, or giving them an opportunity to think about, how do we do this well? What is the point of disagreeing? When is it a beneficial thing? When is it not? And how do I do it? So kind of building those blocks of kind of skills for them to take into other areas of their life and be conscious of what they are doing and what they think they should be doing or could be doing when they're disagreeing.